Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today's going to be a little bit different just because, this is a pretty big topic that I don't think that I can go over in just a brief segment. The Jeff Keighley hosted Game Awards just announced their nominees, and considering the magnitude of this event and really the amount of importance that some people place upon these awards specifically, I want to talk about that. It's really something that's been on my mind for a long time, not just for this year alone, but I think especially with the list that they put together this year, there's really a lot to discuss here. Now, I'll give you my opinion on each one of these games, and we'll also talk about some games that were snubbed as well, but I also want to discuss the Game Awards as a prestigious showcase and really how I feel about this overall event. I mean, every single year, there's a lot of complaints from the community, and I just want to give my own 2 cents on the matter, so do stay tuned for that. Right away, though, let's just go ahead and get into each nominee one by one. Alan Wake 2 made the list, and as a big Alan Wake fan myself, I was very pleased to see it make the list. After a decade-plus wait, I'm thrilled to see this series truly get the recognition that I feel that it's always deserved, because in my opinion, it's always been a shame that more people haven't played the first game. I thought the first Alan Wake was such a gem when it originally released on the Xbox 360, and Alan Wake 2, it takes that mysterious story and it just catapults it into an insanely creative level. If you've played any amount of Alan Wake 2, you'll understand that this is one of the most creative horror games that we've ever seen, albeit a little bit confusing at times. You honestly need to play that first game to fully understand what's happening in Alan Wake 2, and even if you have, you still might be a little lost at times. But the 13-year wait for an Alan Wake sequel was well worth it, and that's once again been cemented with a nomination here. The next nominee, though, is Baldur's Gate 3, and this one comes as no surprise whatsoever. In a year with a lot of big-time releases, Baldur's Gate 3 ended up being the highest rated out of all of them, which right away tells you how critics feel about this game. The nominees were in fact voted on by a panel made up by the media, so those scores are usually a telltale sign on who will be nominated. The thing about Baldur's Gate 3, though, is that it's insanely popular on PC. In its opening weekend, it had more than 800,000 concurrent players, which is something very few games have ever done, and I think that speaks really to its fandom as well. It's not just critics who are enjoying this game. Clearly, fans love it as well, and to this day, it has a 96 approval rating on Steam with more than 350,000 reviews. Keep in mind that it also won the Golden Joystick Awards as well, which was voted on by, yes, you, the fans. So honestly, if I were to guess the winner of the Game Awards, my guess would probably be Baldur's Gate 3. I think that it would be the least controversial, and because it's universally looked at as a good game, I think most people would be happy with the results. Now, I'm not saying that it's my favorite game, but if I were to guess a winner, I'm going to go ahead and say it's going to be Baldur's Gate 3. Now, PlayStation's newest game also made the list, being Spider-Man 2. Again, I don't think that's really a surprise at all. Spider-Man 2 really just kind of took the formula of the first game and it made it even better, which, the first was already amazing. So that says a lot right there just in regards to the quality of this title. Now, I do have some issues with some of its characterization. MJ, she was written flat out terribly. But overall, I think the story, I really enjoyed it. The story of Peter and Harry, I thought that was well put together. It was such a fun ride from beginning to end. I do think that Miles is a likable character, and while I am skeptical of the future of this series and where they're going with it, I do, however, think from a gameplay standpoint, this is one of the best games of 2023, hands down. So I think so far, the Game Awards is putting together a pretty good list that represents a good portion of how the hardcore game community feels, or at least until now. This is where we start to take a turn, because this is probably the most controversial inclusion, being Resident Evil 4. Now, before I even say anything, I feel obligated to make this clear from a personal level. Resident Evil 4 is one of my absolute favorite games this year, if not my very favorite, and the Resident Evil series is one of my favorite series ever made. So anything that I'm about ready to say, I'm not speaking from a quality standpoint. I think that Resident Evil 4 is an outstanding game, and I absolutely adore the remake. But I'm not just taking my own personal enjoyment into consideration. It's not about just how good this game is. There's also the question, is it deserving of the Game of the Year nomination. And the problem that people have with this game being nominated is that it is a remake of a game that was originally made in 2005. That feels a little bit off, and even more so when you start to realize what wasn't included in the nominations. It's not like 2023 was a bad year for gaming. In fact, it's no secret that 2023 has been stacked with great game after great game. And you would think that completely new games would have taken some priority here. But according to the Game Awards, apparently that's not the case. So yeah, there's gonna be a divide with this inclusion. We'll come back to that here in just a little bit when I talk about my overall feelings for the Game Awards. But let's just go and continue with the nominations. Mario Wonder also made the list, and depending on who you ask, this one might be a little bit questionable as well. On one side, this is a good game. There's no doubt about it. I enjoyed it myself. But in such a stacked year for gaming, is it honestly one of the 6 best games of the year? Now, we'll talk about some of those snub games here in just a minute, so I'll let you be the judge of that yourself. But I do think out of the brand new games that are on this list, this is the one that I could see swapped out with some of those snub games as well, just depending on, on what game person to person likes. Now, as for the last nominee, though, and everybody should have saw this one coming, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, of course, made the list. This really is a no-brainer. It's a great game. Both fans and critics love it, and it's going to be a game that we probably talk about 10-plus years from now. Zelda always stands the test of time, and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is no different. I believe it's much better than Breath of the Wild, and it's also unique in the sense that they did add some new things to it with the Fuse abilities. So it's an interesting game that stands out in 2023. So right there, those are your 6 nominations. And now the question really just becomes, does this represent the most deserving Game of the Year candidates for 2023? And this is very subjective. I don't think that there's a single list out there that will have 100% of people in agreement. I've been making lists for this channel for years and years, and I can tell you firsthand, even if you try to stay as objective as possible, which I do try to do, I don't just simply pick my favorite games and that's it. I put a lot of thought into how my list comes together. But even with that, you're never ever going to have everybody agree with you. That's just not possible. There's 7 billion plus people in this world, and they're all going to have their own opinions. So at the end of the day, it really all comes down to your own personal opinion, and your favorite games will be different than mine, or in this case, your favorite games will be different than the Game Awards. With all that said, though, the big problem that I have with the Game Awards is not necessarily with their nominations alone. That's just their opinions. But rather, it's the proclaimed importance that some people makes it out to be. I enjoy the Game Awards as a celebration for gaming, and I like it as a showcase. It's a fun ride. But what I don't enjoy is that every single year, there's a lot of people out there that makes this event into the be-all, end-all award showcase. And I don't think it should be. It's not any more valid than any other award ceremony for gaming, which, there's a lot. I mean, we just talked about the Golden Joystick Awards last week, and that's voted on by millions of gamers, not critics, but actual gamers. So you could even make an argument that speaks more to what fans view as the best games of the year, rather than listening to a group of the media at the Game Awards, which, for whatever reason, seems to include a few controversial games every single year. Now, the Golden Joystick Awards has some issues as well. We covered that last Friday. But my point is, don't necessarily get overly frustrated with the Game Awards and their nominees. Just watch the show for what it is and have a fun time. You don't need them to validate what your favorite game is. That does not change that whatever your favorite game is good to you and probably good to a lot of other people. It's just simply their opinion, and they don't speak for all gamers, or really, to be brutally honest here, I don't even know if they're objective enough to try and speak for the majority of gamers. Again, I'll let you be the judge of that. But as for the nominations as a whole, I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. I mean, my list might be a little bit different, but all in all, this is still an opinion at the end of the day. If these are the 6 games that they chose, all 6 of these games are really good games. I think the only thing, though, is that you do have Resident Evil 4, which is a remake, and the fact that 2023 was so stacked and there were so many deserving titles to be nominated, and to see a remake that was originally made in 2005 get in over all of these other great games, yeah, I mean, I can see why some fans might be a little frustrated about that. There were so many games to choose from, and this is what they came up with. And I think because of that, there's going to be people that kind of scoffs at this overall list. By this point, truthfully, if you ask me, with how many remakes and remasters we get year in and year out, I almost feel like that it should have its own category. Best remake / remaster of the year, which could have been fun for 2023 with games like Dead Space Remake, Star Ocean, of course, yeah, Resident Evil 4. That would have been a fun category. But I think that there's a very real argument that they should have left Game of the Year for brand new games. And that's the thing, because there were no shortage of great games in 2023. I mean, let's go take a look at some of the snubs, shall we? Right away, I know the Xbox community is kind of upset with the nominees. There's already a lot of distrust between the media and Xbox fans as is, and to see two great games this year in Starfield and Hi-Fi Rush miss out on this list, I mean, I know that's frustrating for the Xbox community. It feels like no matter how much Xbox tries or how good their games are, the media will never truly acknowledge them. So I think there's a growing divide with the Xbox community, and I think the belief that there's an Xbox tax is only going to grow stronger when the media makes decisions like this. Now, for me personally, yeah, I would say that Starfield is worthy of a nomination. I think it's just as worthy as some of the games that made the list. And that's something that I've really tried to stress in this video. There's so many games that was worthy of a nomination this year. It was always going to be difficult to narrow things down to 6 games. And whether you agree or disagree with the list, that's completely up to you, because we're all going to have our different favorite games. But Resident Evil being a remake, again, that really is the controversy here. Is it more deserving of these brand new titles like Starfield, or what about Hi-Fi Rush? Hi-Fi Rush was another excellent game this year. It was one of the most nominated games this year, just not for Game of the Year for whatever reason. It is up for 5 other awards, but this is a very creative, highly fun game. I think that it would have been a fun decision if they would have went in that direction. You also have Final Fantasy 16. I really enjoyed Final Fantasy 16. I know it being a little bit more action-driven wasn't necessarily for everybody, but I do think that it's fun. I think it has a great story. It looks absolutely stunning. There was also Diablo 4. That's easily going to be one of the best RPGs this generation. You have Armored Core 6. There's Sea of Stars, Street Fighter 6 Hogwarts Legacy. I know a lot of people love that game. There was Pikmin 4, which, I mean, personally, I'd actually probably rank that higher on the list than Mario Wonder if we're going to go Nintendo. But there were so many good games for 2023 that, yeah, it does feel a little strange that they went with a remake. I can't really blame people for criticizing that decision, but that's kind of the problem that I think that we're running into right now. There's just so much importance put on this event. Like, whatever they say is definitive, and that really shouldn't be how it is. There's so many other ceremonies that awards games as well, and they're all different. The only difference is that this just so happens to be attached to a very popular showcase, in which that's probably why it's got so much mind share online. But this is not the be-all, end-all awards list. It's just one of many opinions out there. Let's go take a look at your all's opinions, though. Let's see how you all feel. And okay, so 57% of you that voted in the poll, you all said that you aren't satisfied with the list that they put together. So yeah, I mean, that kind of speaks to a lot of what I've already said. They don't speak for all gamers, and it's really best to just not get overly worked up over this event. Just watch the showcase and enjoy the ride for what it is. There's always some fun announcements at the bare minimum. I'll tell you what you all can do, though, is go ahead and tell me your favorite games in the comments below. I'm going to save mine for some later videos that I have planned. To keep an eye out for those. Might have my own Game of the Year videos coming up, but until then, that's it for this video. Till tomorrow, peace out.